Thanks, everyone. Is there anyone here specifically for public participation? Seeing none, we'll move on. The first on the list is the police department. Mike, are you ready?
Yeah.
Sorry, I caught you off guard.
Yeah, it's fine. So, for the police department, we met Monday, Phil and I, with the chief, assistant chief. Went over the budget. We approved 2-0 the budget, and I'll kind of take you through it. We'll start with the budget cover sheet, which I provided an update to that yesterday. There was just some changes in some of the description areas. So the overall budget increase is 0.84%, so pretty small overall. Obviously, we're still waiting on changes to the contracts and so forth. Like a lot of the other contracts, the current one is expiring at the end of this year in June, so the new one is under negotiations. Budget is overall within guidelines. Couple areas where there's over 10%, as the chief mentions. Capital outlay, talk about that, is one of those areas. In terms of changes in personnel, there is one position, the mental health clinician, that has been, I think, 4 years now with the department. The first 3 years, she was, the person in this role was funded through a grant and working 19 hours a week. I believe that grant ran out, and last year we funded that with the departmental budget. Due to the high demand of services for mental health clinician, and the really, from what I hear, the great work that this person has done, we're looking to increase that, the number of hours there, and fund that through the American Rescue Plan Act. I was talking with John Denizio this afternoon, and he said it sort of depends how those hours get used. Most likely, it will be the same person increasing her hours from 19 to 38, I think is roughly about what it would be. But that's kind of to be determined whether she wants to do that herself. Otherwise, it could be another part-time position. If she does agree to work the extra hours, then she will be temporarily for this year in a benefited position. So what I did is I asked the chief, even though it's not a new full-time request position, I asked him to kind of put together the new position request form, which he filled out, and also provide the justification for the position. And those were, the justification document was put up on our budget department budget website area yesterday. It's a pretty good description of the position and the work she's done and the increased number of cases that she's pursued over the last 3.5 years, documented there, and all the different departments that she's worked with and so forth. So it was a pretty good description of the benefit of that role. Continuing on, so that's that. Did ask the chief. We discussed some of the grants that the department received, listed on the cover sheet. sheet, and there was one, a state 9/11 Psap grant. That's actually $153,000 for state 911 money to backfill overtime for people that have to fill in for the 911 answering service that the police department provides. I didn't realize it was that large a grant, so that's great, and we use all that up, so we actually have a lot of backfill going on there. There were some other things from Oracle and DCU who provide kind of gifts to the town on an annual basis, and some of that is used for things like community engagement and various equipment for the department as well. So that's the cover sheet, and I'll just kind of walk down through the main budget page. Here, we'll start with salaries. Information there is pretty low amounts in terms of decreases. Getting down to expenses, we see contracted services is up 8.81%. In our discussions there, that's comprised of, I think, three main things. One is a new contract for a police detail tracking system. This is the system as details are done. We have to track those and charge for those details to be paid. And that system is just about to run out of its 3-year contract, so the price is going up a little bit on that. As an aside, it's been a very successful use of that system, because we used to be kind of falling behind on collecting for details, but now we're really much more on top of it. There's also another software program for internal affairs that the chief said, due to kind of police reform things, an internal affairs software program was needed to kind of keep up with some of the requirements and demands around that. And lastly, the officer that used to do a lot of IT work for the town retired. What we're going to do is the chief's going to put his position back kind of on the road as regular officer, and we'll use a service to backfill the IT support that he had been providing. Let's see. Capital outlay is also up a little bit, 13.55%. That has to do with the 3 cruisers that are purchased every year by the department. Prices on those have gone up. The type of car we're using is now a hybrid, maybe a little more expensive, and some of the equipment's a little more expensive. And the net of it is that we added $30,000 extra for those 3 cars, so an extra $10,000 per car. And then down in the special accounts, the uniform allowance is up. Like that's up about $6,000. I believe that had to do with uniforms that the NEMLEC, which is kind of a regional team, SWAT, rapid response team, needed some new uniforms due to the way they've changed them or the way they're requiring certain things. In addition, there's academy clothing being provided for 4 officers. So that's pretty much it. And again, the grand total is 0.84%. So pretty straightforward budget.
Thanks, Mike. Welcome, Chief. Can you,
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and the assistant, and for the audience, and add anything that you would like to supplement from Mike's report?
Sure. My name is Chief Thomas Brown, and this is Deputy Chief Robert Kirshner. I believe Mr. Hardy covered everything. I'm happy to take any questions on anything specific, but those are the 3 major things. The biggest portion of the budget that went up was the capital outlay with the cruisers. Normally, we would average about $30,000 to $31,000 per cruiser. This year, they came in at about $38,000. There was also a design change in the model, so that forced us to have to make changes in the actual equipment that goes in to hold the radios, the radars, et cetera, so, and including the prisoner cages. So to forecast for that going forward, where these models are hopefully going to stay the same for the next couple of years, we asked to add that $10,000 per car.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Phil?
Just one mention that we did delay the implementation of the final piece of the Manning study we did last year and we did this year. So expect that to be in next year.
Okay.
Can you elaborate?
Meaning study is,
We had done a Manning study back in 2015, and that went before the board and town administration, and we got a plan to add 5 new officers over a 5-year period. Well, that 69th position has been held in abeyance for the last couple of years.
so it, okay, thank you.
So that was one question. I hadn't heard it referred to as a Manning study, so I was lost. But, so do you anticipate doing another one of those going into the future? I mean, is that every 5 years we do that? Does that come from the outside? Do we pay somebody on the outside to look at that? How does that work?
We actually did that Manning study inside when Chief Kent was here. We noticed that there was a considerable call volume increase over a couple-year period that had a lot to do with the commercial base in town and just certain changes in policy and procedure and how we were responding to calls, so it prompted that Manning study. I don't see anything in the near future to be coming back to ask for more positions. We're doing okay now, but eventually it will be nice to have that 69th position as well.
As we look at condos and apartments, and, that's a real increase in our population. These aren't new houses that are replacing old ones, that's actually new residents. Is there some number, like, for every X number of residents, you should have another, I mean, as we look at new zoning and things like that, is that something to take into account, that it would be a significant increase in the cost?
There are certain studies. One is through the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police. The number per se, I don't have,
Okay.
but I do know that we use that as a basis for that 2015 study.
And then the cars, so we went to a hybrid car. Is that a statewide pressure, or was that just a local decision?
I believe that's what they got on the state bid. It wasn't a local decision, but that's what came out on the state
So
bid.
it's more of a, okay.
So they're a gas combustible hybrid with the electric. They're not a full electric.
Are they smaller?
No, they're actually
On the
bigger.
inside, are they?
They're actually
I was talking to a Cambridge officer, and she said that the ones the hybrids they ended up with, they're tiny. They're having trouble with some of the officers fitting. So,
The body frame itself is a little higher off the ground, and there's a little more room inside the
oh,
cab.
good, awesome. Thank you.
Brad,
Doug, I know on some of the big projects, I know when Northwest Park was being proposed, they actually had studies on what the delta would be on police and fire and DPW. So on larger projects, I think the town as a whole looks at that increase in manpower. But you're right, I would imagine, and maybe this is a question for the planning board when they're in next week, but I can imagine if there are a whole bunch of smaller projects adding up.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Roger.
So actually, I think there was a local initiative about hybrids. We've asked several times, why aren't you using hybrids? So we have been pushing on it, and glad to hear that it came to pass, though it does seem to be costing more. I'm not sure that's actually going to pay off that way. My question is about the IT. So what's unique about the IT, the network configuration in the police department that makes it unsuitable for the town's MIS department to maintain the networking and some of the other things? Is there something unique about the response time needed or the skills necessary that break the police department's IT requirements away from the townwide MIS?
So I am not technically savvy whatsoever. I will admit that right out front. I do know that the demand for IT in our department is 24/7. So I don't know how many years ago we had Officer Bill Soda, who was put in, actually predates that. Officer Bob Healy was put in charge of the IT over in our department. And he was busy enough that we actually put an officer in there part-time hours as well, which was Officer Bill Soda. I can't speak to the requirements or the demand, other than I have had conversation with the town IT, and it seems to be that this is the way it should go. I think the demand on the town IT people would be too much to take over the police department with the staffing they currently have.
Okay, I mean, it seems like at some point, I'd like to dig a little mean, if it really is a full-time position or a full-time task, then maybe having a separate person, whether they're in MIS or in the police department, is immaterial. And there may be an aspect of it which is familiarity with the unique systems that are in the police department. On a different question, the mental health clinician that you have, this new hire form talks about it being a 40-hour task, 40-hour job. Many of the other positions in town are 35. What's the difference?
That's basically, I put that down on the form as 40 hours, based on the fact that that's probably what she puts in at a minimum every week anyways. I know, like, for me, I'm 35 hours a week. That was probably just a typo on my part, but just to put her up to full-time hours.
Okay, so it is a salaried, not a per hour position?
She would fall in under the administrative and professional plan.
Okay.
And most of, if not all, are 35 hours. So that's a mistake on my part for putting 40 up there.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it had a few clarifications. One was the salary anniversary dates seem to be the same for everyone. Is that actually the case? I just want to make sure that the date is correct here on the salaries. Like if I look at the patrol officers, they're all 52 weeks to next step, for instance. That's pretty atypical compared to all the other departments, is why I ask. Right.
Yes, I see what you're putting out. Obviously, no, they're not all on the same anniversary date. I would have to look into why we put in the 52.
Right. So the concern would be that is there a similar concept to steps, I assume?
There is.
So I just worry that the step analysis may not be correct if that number's not correct.
So everybody who would be eligible for a step, that is figured in. Why it's saying 52 weeks to the anniversary date, I'm not sure. But as we do the budget analysis each year, any officer or employee who's eligible for a step would reflect in their pay.
Okay. As long as you guys are confident that it's got the right total there, that's the big thing, of course.
Thank you.
Okay. On the vacation buyout, is there a cap on how much officers can accumulate and carry over to next year?
Yes, there is, and that's through their contract right now.
Okay, great. So it's not unbounded where they can accumulate it over 20 years and it adds up to
It is not.
forever?
No, the patrolmen have one number in their contract, and the supervisors have a different number, but they're both capped at a number.
Okay, excellent. Just following up on Roger's IT question, I know talking to the MIS guys that there's definitely a desire to have the network be isolated because you have various confidential information and so on. So I understand that, but I would suggest seems like it would make sense to have all the MIS expertise under MIS instead of having this one guy over in the police department where then there has to be a lot of communication. But that would be for you to work out with the MIS department. But I would definitely agree if it's going to be a person here or there, it makes sense to put them all together, certainly.
I understand.
With the mental health work that Karen's doing, it's great that that's working out. It would, I would say from our point of view, we should, once an FT gets added, regardless of whether it's funded by ARP or something else, there's a lot of inertia there, and it's hard to undo these things. When the ARP money goes away, I think it'll be very difficult to say, okay, sorry, your time's up. So I would say we should look at this as it's effectively a permanent FTE add for all intents and purposes. So we should evaluate it that way, and it makes sense to me, but I wouldn't want to think of it differently. Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Somebody else first?
I had questions, but go ahead and I'll follow you.
Just to comment about, I noticed, as with many other town departments, we do not list the names just for things, but that rule was not followed scrupulously in the police budget. There are a couple of names in the line items under clerical,
Okay,
probably an oversight, but
on the clericals,
it's nice
correct,
to see
yep.
that can be consistent. And then I guess I've got one other one. The state 911 PSAP grant. If we hadn't gotten that grant, where would the money have come for that overtime and backfill?
Well, obviously, we're limited in the overtime. The one thing about that PSAP grant, the state 911 grant, is because there is mandatory training for anybody who touches that PSAP unit, and it is state mandated, we've always seen the grants. So a lot of that overtime that's coming back is for the training costs and the overtime costs for the officers to actually do that training. So to maintain those PSAPs, every year we've seen those grants. So it's never been in anticipation that the grant wouldn't come out. Unless they roll back the regulation, the CMR, not requiring that type of in-service training, I don't see that they wouldn't put the money forward.
Okay, I didn't understand that it was a routine grant
Yes.
as opposed to a one-time thing. Thank you.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, gentlemen. I want to follow up just a little bit because I have a memory of something. On the IT business, are you on the same backbone network that the rest of the town is on? Or are you on a private network altogether? Do you know?
I want to say that we're on a separate network, but I really probably shouldn't answer that. I'm not sure.
We could defer to Joe from MIS, who could talk about that, or Jose.
All right. So that's worth, I think there was a piece of that complexity. The complexity came from something related to the backbone and the protection of it and the service of it. And that may all be defunct or immaterial in today's technology, but I think that was the kind of the origins of why we decided just to keep it separate. That was a piece of it. So it should be looked at with, MIS and whatnot. And it could be to your benefit. We're not trying to take something away here.
Right. If Joe could give a quick answer, or Jose, give a quick
Okay.
answer.
There is a separate.
We don't have to go.
Network connection charge in here somewhere.
Yeah.
All right.
Please introduce yourself.
Thank
and
you,
then-
guys. Joe Bongiorno from the MIS department.
Thank you.
So the answer is yes and yes. They're connected, but they're also a separate piece of the network that isn't connected. So like you guys say, I don't want to give away any specifics, but we go up to the basement, and then a feed goes up to the closet that we don't get involved in. So the answer is both. There is a connection. So as far as telephony and things of that nature, that rides back down into the basement, and we take care of all their phones. But as far as their specific computers, their connections to the state and things of that nature, we're not involved in, and we have no connection to that.
Yeah, so the thrust of it is there some benefit in today's technology and setup that there should be more integration or not? You don't need to answer it here. Probably shouldn't, really. I don't know.
But you can.
That's where we're headed.
No, it's more of a takeaway as to whether we
Yeah.
should look at
Look at it anew.
integrating,
Things
right?
can be saved by reevaluating.
Yeah,
Correct, right.
yeah. So, thank you. That was question one, Mr. Chairman. Just, all
How
right,
many questions, Frank?
3. That's
Okay,
fine.
okay, thanks.
No, I'm limited. 3 strikes and you're out. On the clinician position, which we're funding through the federal money, correct? Am I correct?
Right now, we're funding it through the department, and then the request is to add hours through federal
I
programs.
see. So up to the 30 hours is actually 19 is in your operating budget, and the incremental hours, okay. So this whole question about whether that should or could become an FTE position in 2023 maybe, I would think we don't have any commitment to this position as full-time at this point, from the point of view of the person's expectations. We may turn it into that, we may not. Have I got that right?
That's correct.
Right, so that I don't have a problem with, running it another year or two on a part-time plus the opera money, which we get for 2 more fiscal years, and then we need to decide for that, the year after that, whether it becomes full-time or not. So it's a little less onerous.
Just to be clear, I think they're proposing it could be one of if the current person goes to 35 hours, it would be a full-time benefited position. It would just be partially funded by this ARP,
But
but
it would be a benefited position, but isn't there still the understanding that we haven't necessarily committed to an FTE permanently in the department?
that's correct, but
It's
once
gets
someone's
hard.
been a full-time person
Right.
for a year with benefits, it's a little challenging to
I
reverse
get
that.
a box of chocolates, it's hard to eat half of it, I do
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
But I have no problem with doing it this way because the service, I mean, we're at probably a high point of the need for the service. So we should follow it through, and if that persists, beyond another 2 years, then indeed it deserves, that kind of re-scrutiny. So I don't have a problem with that. And the last thing was, the fifth position, so we had this program of 1 FTE a year into the force, and we've held off on the fifth one. So was the administration and the subcommittee and everybody in agreement that it makes sense to delay another year? Or is this a reduction that the subcommittee asked for and got? How did that go?
So we had submitted it into the budget, and during the supervisory approval, it was taken out. So we would anticipate moving forward with it at some point in time.
Okay, so the administration's on board with that. Okay, all right, that's fine. I know this has been a long time in the making, and, at some point, we should decide the position just isn't needed, or we fund it, and we can, and going another year or two isn't gonna do harm to anything that we know of at this point. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Can you talk a little bit about call volume trends, like over the last couple of fiscal years, how your call volumes have been and what you see that going forward?
So I don't have specific numbers for you right now, but I can tell you that the call volume continues to increase. Now, with that said, some of what makes up the call volume, for instance, we have a tremendous spike right now in misdials of 911, and we send a cruiser to every misdial of a 911 because you just never know. That one time you don't send somebody, there could be a bona fide emergency. So there are things like that that are driving up our call volume, but certainly when you look at the level 1 crimes that are happening in Burlington, those are starting to happen more and more too, the violent crimes, as we'll say. And we've had the officer-involved shooting and stuff like that, so we are definitely seeing an uptick, but some of those numbers are going to be skewed because of those repeat type of calls, like the 911 calls and crashes.
Okay. And is there anything you can do about those misdialed 911 calls? Is that something that's technological or?
So we are trying. We have our administrative lieutenant that is working with one of the major stakeholders in Burlington because the people, every time they go to dial out, have to dial 9. We're trying to get them to be able to dial 8. I don't want to mention the name of the location, but
That's a setup.
Yeah, I can imagine where that is, but go on.
But a lot of times you'll hear a person on the call, they end up hanging up, so we've got to send that cruiser. So on the bulk of those incidents with switchboard issues, we are trying, but as you can imagine, from their point of view, it's a tremendous amount of money to get that switchboard changed. So until then, we just keep rolling on the calls and make sure everybody's okay.
And that's expensive and could cause some downstream problems if a real call comes in and you can't respond, so.
It could.
I also support the need for the mental clinician. I think that's a good add to the police department, and I think there's a heightened awareness in the community and everywhere that working with mental health and understanding it may help us in the long run, so I totally support that. Doug?
Sorry, I had one more. With the mental health person, in your backup, it was interesting, there were quite a few, I can't remember what you called them, external referrals and so I saw Somerville listed, I saw Billerica. Are those Burlington residents that interacted with police in other communities, or is that our person actually helping that department because they need that?
So it could be a combination of both. We could come across that person, let's say, in one of the local hotels. They're not a resident here, but we have a crisis intervention need. She deals with them, and instead of just pushing them along to that outside jurisdiction, she makes those connections, and they also come back our way as well. We could have a Burlington resident that needs services beyond the police call, and she then follows that up. I can't speak well enough about her. She's a tremendous asset.
Yeah, I've heard some really good things. And also, they're working with the fire department now, right?
She's working with the fire department. She's got a great relationship now with the schools, some of the other organizations in town. Yeah, she's been outstanding.
Youth and Family Services as well?
Correct, yes.
Awesome. Any further questions from the committee? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
David is out. Frank?
Aye.
Brad?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Jaya?
Yes.
Rob?
Got promoted.
John?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye. That's 12-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is fire.
Steve, I don't know if you want to mute that phone.
Yeah, I can.
I'm not sure whether I prevent them talking through.
What's the budget number on that one?
220?
20?
Need a jacket because it's so windy over there?
Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. So again, Phil and I met with the fire department also on Monday. We covered fire and EMS budgets. We approved fire 2-0. We'll take a quick look at the budget cover sheet. Here we have the overall percent increase requested, 1.89%. Going down a little bit further, budget line items over 10%. We see contracted services increased 31.14%. Education tuition increased by 41.67%, so we'll cover those in a moment. Also, down the bottom there, you see grants and so forth, so there's the department's been doing a great job pulling in different grants used for various things, PPE, there was a thermal imaging camera, some instruction course materials for a safe program, and including carbon monoxide detection in elderly homes and so forth. So I think that the department's been doing a good job with all that. Similarly, Oracle and DCU make annual gifts and donations. These are used to buy tools and apparatus needed by the department. Just taking a quick look on the back page of the cover sheet, the chief kind of laid out a couple of the areas where there were increases. Contracted services up 31%. There's kind of a breakdown of that right below with those bullets. One of the big contributors is $20,000 being requested for an assessment center. This has to do with people that are testing and applying for positions within the department, I think either people coming in or people moving up within the department. So it's an extra way to kind of qualify and test those candidates through this assessment center. I think it's $1,000 per person cost to do that, for us to really be very thorough in that process. Metro fire fees increased. That's kind of a mutual aid fee that we pay into, and we can take advantage of other towns that can help us with larger issues we have. So mutual support. Catch basin cleaning, an extra $1,500 for that. Also $6,000 for medical evaluations of new hires, so different types of medical evaluations to be done for new hires coming in. $4,000 for public relations. This, I think, is something that was, I don't know where it was in the budget before, but this is a person that provides kind of PR services for the fire department. I think the other departments potentially in the town as well. If certain things happen that are going to be in the news, as an example, that person will come in and advise the fire department on, what to say, how to say it, kind of be there with them. It's been used in some situations like the Buffalo Wild Wings incident that happened. This person came in and provided services to help with that. So things of that nature that have been helpful. And then lastly, an additional $3,000 for fire data management. I think that's just an IT system that got more expensive, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then special accounts, that was up 41%. There was an extra $5,000 requested for education and tuition programs for firefighters, and then a $500 increase on the price of EMT recertification. So now I'll just kind of step through the main budget page as well. Going to the salaries section. Let's see, overtime's an interesting one, so that's been put in at roughly $1.1 million. Historically, the department has overspent overtime and had to go figure out how to pay for that. So it's kind of a, hit or miss type of situation. We did discuss, though, that for the first time in several years, the department is fully staffed at 15 men per shift. So hopefully that will alleviate some of the overtime pressure. But things like injuries play a big role in that, and those are hard to predict. Let's see, we already talked about the contracted services. Capital outlay up 4.56%. That's something that we see vary from year to year, and it sort of just depends what the priorities are for various equipment that the department needs. So up a little bit this year. We talked about the education and the recertification costs. So all that into consideration, grand total of an increase of 1.89%. Yeah.
All set?
Yep. That's it.
Welcome, Chief Patterson. Please introduce yourself and the assistant chiefs.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Patterson, Fire Chief, with the Assistant Chief Andrew Conity.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to add anything to Mike's report?
Once again, Mike was real thorough with his report to the board. Certainly be willing to answer any questions regarding any of the information.
Any questions from the committee?
I'd just like to make one addition.
Sure.
Mike's report is that this department, as well as the police department, the DPW department, and recreation are all likely to come in over budget on their fuel costs, depending on what happens. So, and it could be a large number.
I'll have to keep that in mind as the year progresses. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was surprised that was level funded. I was just curious on the fire assessment center. I'm a little unclear. Is that
Sure.
a place, a thing, a piece of software? What is it?
No, so what a assessment center is that we've been looking at assessment centers for our promotional process, particularly promotion to lieutenant and promotion to captain. The fire department is a civil service department, and the way we promoted in the past, it's been 80% written, the written examination that the candidates will take, and then 20% of experience in education, so that 80-20 is combined into a grade or a score, and then we then get an eligibility list from civil service. So what we proposed to do is now create an assessment center component. So there would be still a written component to the promotional process, as well as having an assessment of the candidates. So for an assessment center, we would actually have to put out a request for proposal to bring in an outside vendor. There's several vendors that have been approved through civil service to conduct assessments. So you would take the score of an exam, you would take the score of an assessment center, and you would then take the education and experience. And then you would blend that into your eligibility list.
So is that an interview process essentially, or?
Yeah, so an assessment center could be a situation where there's 4 different scenarios or roles that are conducted during the assessment. And obviously, there's criteria that the assessors are keeping an eye on and grading the candidates as they go through the process. But it could be, an assessment could be a fire problem. An assessment could be a disciplinary type issue within the department. It could be, handling a complaint from a resident of the town. So it's something that we're continue on working on with our union to come up with the type of assessments we want our candidates to be scored on.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And just one quick one. The Class A and B foam does that have PFAS or is that gone now?
So we predominantly use Class A foam. So we have 30-gallon foam tanks in all of our fire engines, and we use Class A foam. So Class A foam extinguishes ordinary combustibles. So Class B foam, all of the old Class B foam that had PFAS has all been removed from our inventory. We didn't have a very big inventory to begin with. So even the inventory that we removed was modern Class B foam, which we replaced anyway with, now they call it green foam, environmentally friendly, non-fluorine containing foam.
Excellent.
So yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Frank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sort of detailed questions, but I'm a little bit confused on a couple of things. First of all, on the special accounts, education and tuition,
Yep.
you're asking for an additional $17,000.
It's actually 5. I believe it's.
So back here in one of the backup pages, you actually listed at 12,000, but you are looking for 17.
Correct, yes.
Okay, which actually
Yep.
isn't in the backup page. I don't know where the 17 would.
It's on the last page. It was kind of all by itself, a little single page like this.
Yeah, when this got printed out,
I see.
some reason, that
I see.
17 was.
Reading this thing was like doing a Rubik's Cube. You had to keep everything.
I
I found the 17. I withdraw my question. Very sneaky, I might add. All right.
We put it was put in there, Frank, to make sure, or to make sure that you were paying attention.
First of all, it's printed two-sided. Some of the columns are on another page. All right, let's
So we
get back.
currently have 12 and we're asking for 17.
So is that contractual, the benefit?
So the contract says that there shall be a minimum amount of money dedicated toward firefighter education. We're bumping that up 5,000.
Okay.
For the reason being is that there's been a lot of turnover in our department in, the past 5 years. We get a lot of young firefighters now that are now moving forward with continuing their education in fire science, fire administration. So this is one of the first years, actually, in a number of years, that we're going to use all of that educational money and then some. So that's the reason why we're asking for the.
Okay, well, I know that we have had some interesting times negotiating the contracts, and I thought that was in it,
Yeah.
but it was capped, I guess, and the utilization of it is a good thing, so
Yeah.
increase the amount, okay.
Yep.
To go back to something that everybody's brought up, so you have, and this is maybe more for
the administration, but we have occupancy listed on here as a line item, and it's up 1.2% at $117,000. Now, that is basically heat for the buildings, am I right?
That's correct. That's heat, electricity, telephone,
Right.
for both of our stations,
Okay,
headquarters
so
and,
the hit on occupancy, if there's going to be one, would come from, I assume you heat with natural gas?
we do, yes.
So and that's a question across the board. You probably don't know, John and Paul, but I think everybody's expecting last year's run rate to not match what you're gonna spend in this next fiscal year. What are we gonna do about that? And it could be 20% more. That would be, that's at least $10,000, maybe 20.
Does John or Paul can answer that?
It'd be 100%.
Well, that's, okay, whatever. I don't wanna argue about how much gas Russia's not gonna give us, but.
I can just say that, price-wise, we're still under contract for another year.
Another calendar or fiscal?
Another fiscal year.
So this budget is, the cost is reflected against a contractual agreement. And does that, a lot of those agreements have what are called exigency or unforeseen overrides, where they can come back and get more than what they set the price at, depending on something in the market. You know, if you really have it locked in?
We don't have escalator.
Say that again?
We don't have that escalator in the contract.
You do not, okay. Got a good deal.
Good bargaining.
Yeah.
But heads up for next fiscal year.
If we only knew. And then the last thing is gas and oil and whatnot is a separate line item. Is all the diesel fuel in that line item under supplies?
Whereas gasoline,
Well, it says gas.
yeah, we have gas and diesel.
Right, and is the diesel bought contractually as well? I mean, we burn quite a bit of it.
Yes, sir, no. Bergerac behind you.
And I thought that was Whitney.
So we use state contract for that. I will say we get a pretty good deal. For example, our February gas and diesel was $3, just over $3. It was much more than that at the station, as opposed to half of that a year ago.
Okay, and, all right, let me just, I can't find it real fast. I don't remember the total amount of money on that one.
Frank, while you're looking, one more point to make on the occupancy is just that through all the efforts we've made through efficiencies and green communities and all that, we haven't really decreased the budgets by a ton over that time frame so we don't have to worry about.
Right,
a
well,
little
we've gotten a
uptick in
lot more efficient is the bottom line.
Yeah.
And that's a big help. So the gas oil line, it went from, if I'm reading this correctly, it went from 60,000 down to 50,000 in this budget, which.
So of course, when we put these budgets together, in December, that was before all the changes that are occurring in the world. But I will say that the previous 2 fiscal years, we've carried over.
You must have come in
a
under.
significant,
Right.
There's been a significant balance left there, so I felt comfortable to reduce
That's
it
why
by
you
10.
reduced it.
Yes.
And so the only thing that might get you would be like a 20% escalation on diesel or something like that, which would be, I don't know, it could be maybe another $5,000 to $8,000.
I mean,
Not a lot.
we'll certainly keep a close eye on
All
this
right.
and may have to adjust.
I'm not trying to split hairs here.
Yeah,
I'm just,
no.
I mean, you do use a lot of fuel. So, okay, that seems good. You did lower it, 10K. Okay.
Roger. Go ahead, Roger. Or,
Okay, good.
and then I'll go to Rob.
Okay. This is a little thing, but catch basins. Doesn't DPW regularly clean catch basins, and what's unique about the ones in the fire department?
So when we talk about catch basins and oil trap, what we're really talking about is the drains inside our apparatus bays. So, we have a number of drains in our apparatus bays, and particularly during the winter months, sand and debris can get into those drains. So we bring in an outside vendor typically to come in and do a thorough cleaning of our storm drains in both stations. Because if you don't, then water doesn't drain. If we wash our apparatus, then the water doesn't drain. And it
Understood.
just accumulates on the apparatus floor. So
Right.
something we've always done to prevent pooling of water on the apparatus floor. And we, as part of this too, is that we also, will hit sinks and throughout the buildings to prevent any clogs or anything like that.
Okay, I guess I'm surprised that it shows up as a new thing here.
Well, I mean, we've always done headquarters, but, and we never had to pay much attention to Station 2. But now with the new building, it's been in service for over 2 years. We want to maintain the drains at the new building as well, so.
All right, and then I understand that the new DPW building has a rather sophisticated wash system, which requires similar kind of cleaning of the drains because of all kinds of things that come in up there.
Yep.
Anyway, there's a similarity, I guess, covered in one department. But they're just, a couple of these things just seem odd that they're showing up now. There's an item for medical evaluations. Didn't we
Sure.
always do them?
Absolutely, yeah, we always did them. It's just, when we did them, when I'm asked where does the money come from, I would say, contracted other. I'm not a big fan of other. I like to spell things out. So instead of, having a balance, a healthy balance in other, I'm spelling it out, so.
Okay.
So it's clear.
And then on a different question, I'm probably delving into area that shouldn't go too deep, but on the assessment center, what are the benefits that you see getting out of it other than shifting the percentage of the scores 20 and 80 that go into, that previously went into it in the civil service, required civil service structure?
I mean, I personally believe an assessment center in combination with a written exam gives a better picture of the candidate itself. It's not just based on how you can retain knowledge, through memorization. You actually, as part of the assessment center, you actually have to perform in different scenarios related to our particular job. So it gives a better picture of each candidate, the strengths and weaknesses of the candidates.
Thanks. Looks like Paul's got something he
Yeah, I
wants to
just
add.
wanted to jump in. We've been using those at the police department for quite some time now, and it's just another category, independent evaluation of candidates based upon real-life scenarios as opposed to just studying for an exam and the experience part of it. So you're able to evaluate on some other aspects of a candidate's package that doesn't necessarily refer to, just studying for a test or, longevity in education. So they run them through the paces of some real-life scenarios, and it's actually been very, very beneficial to our work at the police department promotional process.
All right. I mean, I think it makes sense. I assume it gives you a little more flexibility and some more objective information compared to, what's the framework provided by civil service, which I know we've got rid of in one department, but it still has a fairly rigid process. Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that there's nothing under vacation buyback where the police department had like $7,000 with contracts.
So,
They're all gone.
I'm going to defer.
Sarah, no.
Didn't make any sense.
Get those headlights turned on.
It's more of
Good
a-
question.
It's more of a placeholder.
It's in.
I think it's in 10. Yeah, it's in 10.
I think the
just to add to the assessment center, those scenarios have to be specific to Burlington. For instance, like a Wild Wings situation where you have a hazmat or, fire on the 6th floor at the old Baybank building, et cetera, fire in the mall, various things like that. So it has to be specific to Burlington.
But it doesn't have to be an event that's currently happened. It could be something that potentially could happen. Okay.
Hopefully, they're not all currently happening.
Correct.
Conflagration and Ways and Means Committee.
Right.
We've got 5 minutes.
At least the fire department is 2 doors away, so they'll be here quick.
You hit the jackpot with this. A showstopper.
So, are you talking about the vacation buyback that's in the overtime line?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why we couldn't. But
Where is
so,
the vacation buyback and rest of it?
so the way vacation buyback would work, can you guys hear me if the mic's that far away? So the way the vacation buyback would work would be absorbed in the full-time salary of that person when they left. I guess I would say not luckily, but fortunately for the budget, it takes a while between the time someone retires and the time a new person goes to the academy. So there's regular salary savings. It isn't funded in the overtime budget that you see the words vacation buyback. That's why there's 0 there. But the vacation buyback is paid out of, or the buyback, all of it, whether it's sick or vacation, is paid out of regular salaries upon retirement of a firefighter, made up through the salary savings of the time between, the delay between that person stopping working and the new person starting.
So what's the difference between that and what the police have in their budget?
So the police can, on an annual basis, buy back some vacation and budget for it in a separate line like that. So up to a certain amount of their vacation unused at the end of a year, they can buy back some of that. So they budget for it separately in their breakdown of salary lines.
Is it capped?
There's no, go ahead.
What's the cap on this,
On the police?
on the fire buyback?
So vacation isn't capped because you're due your vacation as you earn it. For sick, I can't remember what the cap is. It's different for existing. We'd have to get back to you on that. There is
Is there a limit on,
Vacation is capped as well.
vacation would be capped insofar as you can't carry over all of your unused vacation.
Got it.
so
if you
there
don't
is an
use it-
accrual limit? That's what I was going to ask.
Okay.
Sorry.
What is the accrual limit? Do you know?
Vacation, it depends on the employee's time that they have on the job.
Sure.
New employees get 1 week, then it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, every 5 years it goes up.
Sure, okay. So it would be like maybe twice as much as what they can earn for that particular
So
year?
basically, the cap for an individual senior firefighter would be 600 hours. They have to use half of what they have on January 1st plus any accruals. So by December 31st, they have to use half of that January 1st number. So if they had 300 to begin with, they earn 300 for the year. December 31st, they have to have used 300. And then the next day, theoretically, they get another 300. So it's kind of self-limiting the way it's written.
Okay.
Start with 0, but it can be built up over time, but the cap, I guess you would say, is 600 for a top senior firefighter.
Do you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to observe that if they really just only have to use half and everything else is carried over, then in fact it does build up over time.
Right.
Maybe the real cap is 600, not understanding.
Right, so they, as long as they hit 600
Yeah,
by the end of the year. they're
vacation
okay.
accrual.
And they do have the ability to sell back 96 hours annually. So if
Where's
they,
that in the
does that come from? That's equivalent to Rob's question about the buyback.
I mean, that comes out of full-time salaries.
Interesting.
But how, I guess, if there are no, like, if there are no retirements, where does that 96 hours come from per firefighter?
I mean, I know we pay it through full-time salaries. Yeah, it's contractual,
Yeah.
96 hours.
So why don't we send you a detailed response to that, what the cap is for each individual level?
Any other questions?
And where that amount shows up in the line item, because
Right.
on the individual firefighters spreadsheet, I would not expect to see that in the total line. Which means there has to be a line somewhere else that includes those amounts. Anyway, a detail would be great, thanks.
Could add in that it can change from year to year.
Well, yes, but in a particular budget, the numbers are fixed.
I had some questions around the recruitment process. So in the past couple of years, you've had a lot of trouble recruiting, and it seems like at least this year, you have a full house, which is great news.
Yeah.
What does that recruitment pipeline look like in the future? Like, are we still having problems statewide attracting qualified candidates? And is that going to be a problem if you have a lot of retirements in the upcoming years? What does that look like?
Sure, so when Burlington Fire Department hires a new hire, we're a civil service department, so we request a list of paramedics through a selective certification civil service list, and then we get the list of candidates. So we've been lucky in Burlington because our retirements have been staggered, so it hasn't been like we've had to hire 4 or 6 people in one shot. That becomes a challenge, just watching some of the other fire departments around us, that when they have to fill a number of positions, it's a challenge. But we've been lucky in that, our retirements have been, they've come, and then we've been easily able to fill spots using the selective certification list up to this point. We've also drawn some interest from firefighter paramedics that currently work at other departments, and they're interested in working in Burlington, and that's what's called a lateral transfer, that we can get someone with some experience, that can come right on to our job without having to attend the Massachusetts Fire Academy. So we've been lucky up to this point. I will say that there's not a giant pool statewide of paramedics. I don't know the exact number, but it certainly can be a challenge, because every department that runs an ALS program that's civil service are trying to get that same pool of candidates. So it's a challenge. So we sell the town of Burlington, we sell the Burlington Fire Department to potential candidates, and we think we have a lot to offer in this town, and it's been pretty successful as far as recruitment goes.
Thank you. Doug?
Couple of things. How's the ALS implementation going? And
So we think that the ALS implementation's been going really well. We've been delivering ALS for the past 2 years. The feedback we've been getting has been really strong throughout the community, throughout the hospitals. We're real proud of this program that we've established and we're running. That being said, we look to better ourselves as we progress, and we're always, looking at better ways to provide the service.
How are you staffed for paramedics?
So as of today, we have 20 firefighter paramedics, 19 of which will work on a shift. So each shift has either 4 or 5 paramedics. So our ambulance 1 out of headquarters is run at the ALS level 24/7.
Good. And collections? 'Cause
So, our collections is, now that we provide the ALS service, we don't rely on an outside vendor. Armstrong Ambulance is in the past. So with Armstrong, an ALS call, the receipts were divided 60% toward Armstrong, 40% toward Burlington. So now we're capturing that additional 60%. So
And
the revenues
are we collecting it?
So the revenues have been strong.
Good.
As far as ALS service, yes.
And then one more, I've just recently started hearing that there's a little movement within the paramedic community maybe to increase the education and the hours to become a paramedic pretty dramatically, like maybe make it a 4-year degree.
So, there's different ways to go about getting your paramedic certification. Most commonly, people will go to a program, Pro EMS out of Cambridge, which is a great program. We actually have a couple of our fire dispatchers that are in that program. That's one way to go. You can go to a community college and get your certificate in paramedicine as well. That'll prepare you to take the state exam to get your license to operate. So there's different options. Typically it's about an 12-month process, start to finish, to get your paramedic license through like a Pro ambulance.
Yeah, it was the people at Pro that were telling me that they see that that's going to change and become a much longer program. So that made me a little nervous about what it was going to require.
To be, honestly, right now, we have one of our people that's in a somewhat accelerated program. I think it's a pilot program that Pro's running for the first time, so they'll be able to evaluate how successful that program is.
The mention of ALS, and in particular the receipts, I imagine all that money that comes back comes into some account, probably revolving account.
Yep.
Is any of that money used to offset expenses that are in the operating budget?
So at this point, no. So there is an ALS account that has been created, but in order to use any of that money, it has to go through the vote at town meeting, correct?
Still essential.
John, yeah.
So we have a placeholder on on the town meeting warrant for this upcoming May which we had last May, and we've postponed it. Basically, what we wanted to do was get a good idea of what the additional revenue is and a good idea of what the additional expenses have been, so that we'll know what's a good number, because those expenses have been eating into their operating budget. They've just had less money to do other things. So that we could use that data to try to ballpark what we think a fair offset would be to request a transfer from that receipts reserved account. And that's where all of our ALS receipts go, deposited into receipts reserved. We come to town meeting, we request for it to be transferred to another account to help offset that. One of the ideas when we first went to ALS was to be able to earmark a portion of that revenue to help with training both for ALS and other training in the department that has been lacking for a while. So we expect that a transfer from that would be twofold. One would be an amount of money to help offset for the costs, the additional costs of ALS, not all of them, and the other would be to sort of beef up our training program through those funds. So,
All right, so we'll hold details when that warrant article comes up for discussion in the next few weeks.
Yes, in a couple weeks. So I don't know the exact balance, but the money's been going in there since, well, we've been running ALS since April of
2 years.
20. But I wanted to say the money's been going in since then. So there is over $1 million probably. Get you out. When I respond to you with the answer on the vacation.
Awesome.
Great, thanks.
Chair,
Move to approve?
thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Frank,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill. Bill,
Yes.
thank you. Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jaya,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. That's 12-0. So now we have 291, the emergency management. Mike.
Oh, yes, okay. This was pretty unchanging budget. Everything, I think, is level funded. Yeah, everything's level funded, so subcommittee approved 2-0.
Would you like to add anything to Mike's report?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much what Mike said. We've been operating with this amount of dollars for the past several years without any changes. So it's level funded once again this year. You know, the main things is the salary for an emergency management director, materials and supplies that we use. Typically, equipment that we replace has to do with like sheltering type equipment. You know, we have three trailers at fire headquarters loaded with sheltering type equipment in the case we ever have to open up a shelter. And then we also have money that we have dedicated toward any type of training during the course of the year. You know, we work with the Board of Health. I mean, COVID's kind of slowed us down as far as conducting in-person training, but we hope to get back to that. So there's funds in there to do certain type of trainings as well.
Questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to approve?
Second?
Thank you. Frank,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jaya,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye, 12-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next on the budget is MIS.
Did everyone get the updates to the MIS budget? There was a change to the salaries page that I think I sent out last week, but there was an update to the cover sheet. None of the numbers changed, it just, Whitney was kind enough to get the narrative in line with what we're presenting. If anybody needs a copy,
Is that posted online?
and it's posted online correctly, yes.
Just today.
Just today.
It's very fresh.
It's just in time. Brad,
And you have the number?
155?
155.
Thank you. So, I'm sure MIS is tired of seeing the subcommittee, at least tired of seeing me. We've had 2 meetings with them over the past several weeks, and thank you to my fellow Town Hall 2 member Megan and John Eiler. I think you were in on one of them, and Steve was in on both as well here. So proposal seems a lot more straightforward than it did 2 weeks ago. So thank you for the 2 hours and extended discussion. So, so at the end of the first talk, there was confusion on, certainly on my part, about the proposed changes to staffing. Through talks with ISAC and MIS, there were some recommendations to add more person hours toward cybersecurity matters in town. There are many cybersecurity measures in place, but again, ISAC and MIS, of course, continually look to what else could be added. So I'll leave it at that. So the issue became we do need more person hours. How do we staff that? And so one of the things I got hung up on is there was an agreement reached between MIS and the town administration on a proposal, and don't take offense, Mike, but I had wondered if they needed even more hours toward that. So I think I'm comfortable now with what they're proposing, but again, that took some discussion. So here's the proposal. So the clarification on what was being proposed, if you go to the salaries page, what's being proposed now is that 2 of the existing positions will take on more responsibilities as to cybersecurity. Since in theory more time spent and more complex job, there are this $10,000 line item under cybersecurity dedicated hours would be used as stipends, tentatively $5,000 per pre-existing position. In order to backfill the regular duties that are being taken care of now, the proposal is to hire a junior member of the department at a non-benefited position, 19 hours a week, to take over more of the routine type work. So again, my question was, why not hire a full-time cybersecurity person? And that they all the parties here, all the experts convinced me that it's not cut and dry that you hire a cybersecurity guy, and if I'm offending anybody from the ISAC committee, please step in and correct me, but it's cybersecurity is it's less IT work and more processes and education. Am I summing that up right? And so so there's give and take, it's dependent on the community, depending on the people that you're supporting. So the idea is to expand the hours, again, the available hours some, and work toward developing what is ultimately needed. And again, ultimately needed may indeed be a full-time, very senior level position, but we're understanding the town and the needs and working up to that. So, so this is where we are. Do you want me to continue with the budget, or do you want to discuss, take the moment to discuss the?
We can continue with the budget and then have the MIS department supplement your report, and then we'll take questions.
Because the rest is now anticlimactic, but.
It doesn't all have to be dramatic.
You can make it exciting, Brad.
Maybe we're being hacked as you speak.
Thank you, Frank.
We adding a full-time employee?
No.
We're not adding.
So, in addition to staffing changes, there's an increase in network and web services for improvements to Gmail archiving, backups, and security software. There is a slight increase in the cost of Munis support and in capital outlay for computers. The budget request is for $740,533. That is an increase of only $67,157, but coming in at 9.97%. And the subcommittee of, actually that day was Megan and me, we voted 2-0 to support.
Great. Jose, please introduce yourselves and then supplement Brad's report.
Thank you. I am Jose de Souza, and Joe Bongiorno next to me. Yes, first of all, I want to say thank you to the 4 members of the subcommittee that have been with us a couple of times. I understand that was kind of complicated situation. In my department, we started talking more about cybersecurity just because if we go previous 2 years ago, perhaps the amount of work just dedicated to that was minimum. But with the COVID introduction over here 2 years ago, and now with the attacks that everybody knows that is happening overseas, this is becoming more and more and more a type of a task that you have to pay more attention, in which we didn't had that as a problem before, but now it is. So one of the proposals that we presented on the table was exactly trying to find a person that would go an entry level, replace or promote a current network technician to a system manager, and get the critical systems administrator to have some of these roles. This is not something that we just did, discuss rapidly, if you want to put it that way, because we did a research on how much would it be trying to get the services of a CISA or CISO or cybersecurity information system officer. And if you look in salaries, you will see that it's much more than what we're asking for. That was one of the requests that we had. I don't know if you want to add something to this.
No.
The other thing in the regular budget that we ask is just contractual increases that goes from every year, plus the inclusion of 2 new tools that was actually a recommendation from the ISAC committee that helps us to perhaps see better or analyze better possible problems that we may have inside. I don't know if you have any questions about this
Any questions from the committee? Frank, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't quite understand. Are we adding a full-time person or not?
No,
No.
We're not?
we're not.
Okay.
We're bumping up the responsibilities and duties of 2 people and backfilling the more routine work that's getting crowded out with a part-time new hire. It's non-benefited, which I understand is outside the FTE process.
I get it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And stipends, right?
And stipends for the critical.
19-hour, yes.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, just put in perspective, there's currently 4 people that are supporting the entire non-school IT infrastructure, and just sort of 2 and change supporting the school infrastructure, as I understand it. So it's not a huge department right now. Are there any departments other than the police that are on their own, so to speak, or is police the only one that's separate?
So the library also has a part-time position, it's a tech support position on their end.
Okay.
We work with them, we help them hire them, but as far as that the rest of it is very much hands-off. But if they have any requests from us, we're willing to work with them. But that's their own position.
Okay, great. And
Can I just add to that real quickly?
Yep.
Just from an ISAC perspective, we have coordination with the police, the library, the schools, and the town administration. So we do some central coordination across the board, even though organizationally they're different departments. And
which is great. And so I'll just, put the plug in on your end. It seems like with the police IT person retiring, that this is a pretty good time for you to speak with the police and see if there's a way that it makes sense for that to be under the MIS department or not. From the outside, it seems to make sense. Thank you.
Any further questions? I know, Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the availability of an IT person part-time?
You want to say, as far as finding someone in that position? So again, like we just spoke, you're on the library group as well, right? So when that 19-hour position was a perfect fit over there, if we could find somebody like the gentleman you have over at the library, that would be a perfect fit. So, and that was just done within the last 6 months. So did Mike get lucky finding him? Maybe, but we expect to do just as well.
You can say to.
I'm sorry, the director of the library, go ahead.
The number of applicants for that position too.
Yeah, I think well, I don't know how many total he got, but we interviewed about 4 people, and they were all very qualified individuals. Some of them, actually a couple of them were overqualified. I was shocked. We could find that gentleman, he was actually a network engineer that was looking for a 19-hour-a-week position, just because he wanted to get into this sector, if you will, the government sector. So he was way overqualified, and I pressed him on that. I said, "You realize it's 19 hours?" I said, I'd love to get you over at our office.
So it sounds like it's feasible.
Yes.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't pretend to really understand who's doing what here. It's a little bit, you've put a lot of energy into figuring it out, so that's fine. I'll let you worry about that. But to understand the staffing just maybe macroscopically, so there are 4 full-time people in this department, am I right?
Yes.
Correct.
And does this department, do those 4 people have any obligations to the school department? Don't you work with the school
I
department?
work with the school, yes.
So
I also work with the town.
So, but your whole salary is in this budget?
No,
So this is a shared position?
correct.
I thought your entire salary comes from,
From the schools, from the school.
but your duties.
Yes, both duties, yes.
So in this salary budget, Jose is not here,
Correct.
but are you one of these 4 people? No.
No,
Okay, all right, so all right, I get that. And this is a really critical department from my point of view. Before I worry about how many people are in it, we really want to get this right. And one of the best ways to get it right is to have enough of the right skill sets, which is not necessarily a lot of people, it's the right skill sets. So with this sort of restructuring that you're talking about here, do you think you've got all the skill set you need to pursue the issues that could be out there and to improve our systems as we know them today? And do you feel fully empowered to do what you think needs to be done?
I think that we have the skills. Time is the issue.
And so this one part-time position, you think will give you enough time to add the other duties into the people that are there?
I got a few things. So IT is going to continually grow. Probably you don't want to hear this, but I think in reality, we'll probably be back here next year, possibly asking to grow that into a full-time position. I'm not going to lie to anybody here. IT is just getting more and more and more. Perfect example, like Jose said, during COVID, all of a sudden, everybody needed VPNs. IT, more and more things are going digital, that's kind of even an old word, using the word digital, probably more cyber. And the department will continually grow. 10 years ago, I think there was 1 person in a position here, or 15 years ago. And we've grown to 4, and now we're asking for another half. So, it's a step in the right direction, but I don't think it's ever going to change. And there's one point I want to make, and this may be totally out of line, but there was, we met with someone who worked in a university. And to put things into perspective, I think you have 3,600 students.
That's what he said.
And we have, how many employees on the town side? Close to 1,000? Is that a fair thing to say? This individual we met with had 5,000 employees and 15,000 students. And we asked him, how big is the IT department? Thinking of probably something similar or some factor of such. And he came back and he said, we have 250 employees. And I was completely shocked. And then he said, just in his networking group, he has 29 employees. So I know things aren't dollar for dollar, and there's different different scales, and we're local government, we're not a large university. But again, if you put 15,000 students, 3,500 students that Jose is supporting, 1,000 employees on our end compared to 5,000 employees, he has 250 employees. And if you combine us, we have less than 10. So even if we said, you know, a tenth of 250 would be 25 employees, I'm not here asking for 25 employees. But to say this half position is going to be enough, it's going to be enough for now. It's going to be a step in the right direction. But I think we're going to continually grow and to come back in the next few years and maybe at some point actually ask for a full-time Chief Informational Security Office. I don't think would be an unreasonable request, not today, not tomorrow, but 5 to 10 years from now.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to pursue a little bit, I don't know if you can compare, you know, the workload of a university situation with a municipality. I mean, a lot, and you have two pieces of this whole thing. One is just the service, and then the other is, I don't want to use the word, but I really have to, the security of the service. I mean, and they're not exactly the same thing. And so all I'm trying to get at here is, I think the level of service that we're providing is really good. I mean, you know, what do people do, right? They get on the network, they exchange information, they store information, they get messaging and mail and documents. And, you know, that's all, whether there's 50 people doing it or 1,000 people doing it, it all should sort of work. And you buy those packages and, you know, the network is the network. But as services change, as people do new and different things, as, you know, map services become more sophisticated, or data collection, and then there's the issue of, you know, just basic firewalls is just not enough anymore, right? You need a whole lot more of process and layers and purchase technology that sniffs stuff out. And so you're doing all of those things as well. And all I'm getting at here is, or trying to get at is, at least for now, are we where we need to be with this level of skill set and number of people in the department?
Yes.
And the answer is yes. You think you're getting what you need out of this for now?
Yeah, but you got to keep in consideration, it's not just the human factor over here, it's also the technology that we apply that helps a lot too.
Right.
And this town has been very generous, if you want to put it that way, on providing that technology.
Right, okay, all right, thank you. I don't have a specific question. I'm really trying to just probe a little bit. And it's hard, at least for us, at least for me, to understand the whole picture here. So I'm not even going to try to, other than your reassurances.
Brad?
And Frank, how I was looking at this is, you know, that again, MIS had originally so there were a number of options that they were looking at for increasing staffing, and several of them were a full-time position. And in talking with the administration suggested half-time. And what made me uncomfortable is, you don't want to balance the budget on something that's really, you know, the safety of the community. You know, you don't want to cut staffing on police and fire just to balance the budget, you know, for example. But again, they assure me that kind of where they are with building the infrastructure, I guess that's the right phrase. And actually, Mr. Denizio had put it in context. Do you want to share your thoughts, John?
Sure. I'll just comment
Denizio.
on how we came to that decision. We had a lot of conversation with the IT department about the proposal, and I don't want you to think we didn't take it seriously. We certainly did. I think cybersecurity is only getting more and more sophisticated, and obviously we need to make some inroads on that. What we looked at was the very specific set of tasks that we're lacking. These guys did a good job through the ISAC coming and pointing out what it is that we're not getting to now, or we're just not spending enough time on it. And we work together to say, okay, how can we accomplish these tasks and not commit right away to hiring a CISO or adding a whole new body without knowing if this is gonna be adequate, if it needs to scale just a little bit, or we ain't gonna get there, we need to do something bigger. So we thought, taking the time to upgrade a position, or have the money to upgrade a position or two, free up some time from the managers to tackle these tasks, see how far we get, see what we can accomplish, while not committing to a full-time person or adding another person, because if we did go this route, and it turns out this isn't the model that's gonna work for us, we have a person we just hired and committed to, and now we're gonna fire them and go a different direction. So this allows us the time to test the model, see how far we can get. Do we need to just scale that, or do you need to go in a whole new direction? So I would say that we weren't just trying to make a number here. There's a little bit of that for sure. But we did take it seriously. We did put a lot of thought into the model and how it's gonna work for next year. And, you know, I don't discount that we may be back asking for more or to change the model, but this will give us a chance to get started on that.
And just to put that in perspective, the ISAC committee meets monthly, and we go over the issues related to cybersecurity and IT in general, and we have a good sense of where we're at, what we need to do. This position will allow us to move forward with getting a lot of the cybersecurity preparedness done, but it will also allow us to continue to identify gaps and where we might need to augment structurally in terms of, you know, do we need an IT director? Do we need a CISO? Do we need a combination of both? We still need more time to evaluate it, but yeah, we don't want to halt on what we're doing with cybersecurity. So we want to go full forward with that. I think this will help a lot. Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you give us some examples of commonplace attacks, ransomware, the types of things that are occurring on a daily basis? If they're occurring on a daily basis, how many, you know, in the course of a year, and where are they targeted? You know, we're doing more and more electronic transactions in the Treasury Department. You know, you have more confidential information in the police department. So where are these attacks directed?
So we did some training last year with the department heads. We put together a little training of our own. And we were talking about some of the bigger cybersecurity things that have taken place over time, like the Capital One. And you could see the department heads weren't really relating to that. So one of the sessions, we basically drew a circle around Boston, a 60-mile circle. And we saw cybersecurity attacks on police departments. We saw cybersecurity attacks on Boston Public Library, as you guys all saw last summer.
Municipalities,
Yeah, exactly. Municipalities, colleges, schools. So right in this area, we quickly found 5 that happened just since April of last year, that were, you know, municipal or government or local government attacks.
Has there been any attempts to penetrate our security wall, our firewall?
There are always, yes. It is constant. That doesn't stop. I just want to add something. A couple of weeks ago, Joe and I attended a meeting in Haverhill Town Hall, or City Hall, actually. And there was a fellow from a senator, right? I just don't recall his name. And he made allusion about ransomware. He said during the last 2 years in Massachusetts, they have paid over $100 million in just ransomware from schools and from municipalities.
And I think his point was, if that was a bank robbery, there'd be 1,000 cops on the street trying to stop it. But, you know, what are we doing for cyber? And again, we are doing a lot, and the state is doing a lot. But again, the emphasis, $100 million bank robbery, everybody would be jumping through the roof. But it happens in cyber, and not that it doesn't hit the headlines, but, you know, it's not like a SWAT force that we can put out there to stop it. and that's what we're trying to do.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure.
Sorry, Jose. Was just on top of the Scared Straight program that Joe was talking about, that he had with department heads, left worried and want to throw our computers away. We also do Joe was talking about the training with the state, where employees that are on our network have to go on and you do the videos and you do the test, and it's the usual stuff, and it's very relevant, because this is stuff that happens today, right now, and what we worry most about isn't the big network penetration, it's someone clicking on something on an email that looks like it's from somebody they know. Paul and I were in a meeting yesterday, when I got an email from him asking me to change his account number for his direct deposit. So,
Let's go.
but those are
Take
the,
care of that for you, Paul.
You change it?
those are the exact examples in the training that we get from the state. They are very relevant. They're the things that are going on now. But like we said in the beginning, it's getting more and more sophisticated, so to try to stay ahead of it. But I just wanted to make the point that there is the high-level training with department heads, but there's also, to the boots on the ground, to everybody that's typing in the computer, they are required to go and do this mandated state training. We're getting those, the cybersecurity policy added into our collective bargaining agreements. Easier said than done, but we're working on it.
Thank you.
And there has been buy-in, other than a small amount of folks, which as you drill down and look into it, there are reasons why they haven't completed it, because most of them just don't ever log into our network. So they don't even know they got an email that said they had to do the training. So we do work hard on this. We take it very seriously. And we're attacking it, no pun intended, from all different angles.
And just to add to that, the ISAC committee is also paying attention to what's happening at the state level, because there's a lot of state resources that we can look at and utilize. And also, we look at the federal level to see what kinds of opportunities there are there as well. And the other component is a non-technical aspect, but there is the aspect of social engineering attacks. If you look at Peterborough, New Hampshire, they transferred $3 million of their $15 million budget because someone called to say, I have a new account number for you, and they took it willy-nilly. So we work on all aspects of this as well.
If I can go back to it, they put 900,000.
We try that on Mr. Cheese and RDA, they fall for it.
Any other questions for the MIS folks with relations to the operating budget? Chair. Thank you.
Second?
Thanks. Frank,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
do you need more time to think? Megan,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jaya,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. That's 12-0. Thank you. And now the accommodated accounts for MIS.
Yes, thank you. So this is a less contentious budget item. As you may recall, we're in the middle of a 5-year plan. This is the third year, consisting of a $1,477,533 to improve network hardware access, to improve network hardware across the town, and a little over $500,000 expense toward improving network security. Now, the work on the hardware was completed last year or so, and the network security improvements are still ongoing. The town is being billed $400,000 per year as part of a 5-year zero-interest loan from the provider. And again, these are services and equipment that we've already accepted, and we're just paying the third year of the 5-year zero-interest loan. Subcommittee voted 3-0 to support.
Jose, would you like to add anything to that?
Just a reminder that this is like the third time that we've been doing this with the town and the schools, and we're just trying to revamp hardware and also the enterprise security solution, which is something that really helps us on things like cybersecurity. And again, this is part of what I say, that thank you to the town, because the amount of money really is significant, but it helps a lot to protect your assets. and this is going to be the third out of the 5-year agreement.
Thanks. Any questions from the committee?
Move to approve?
Thank you. Frank,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jaya,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. That's 12-0. Good timing, Phil. Thank you, Jose and Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, the assessor is 141.
All right. So we probably should have, we got quite an audience from the board and the department.
First of all, thank you very much for waiting.
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of new faces. Let me just do a very brief overview and a little bit on the driving factors, and then I think we really want to have the board and the members here talk to us a little bit. So first of all, it's a 2.83% increase. There are a lot of changes that have been made if you look at the details. That's driven fundamentally by a retirement, a hire, and a decision to reverse an in-house operation back to outsourcing, which is the data collection, which historically we had always done. Mr. Doherty made a valiant attempt to bring that all in-house and reduce the cost quite a bit. It didn't work, you know, the way they needed it to, and it makes sense to just put that back where it was. In addition to that, we have a real need. I don't think I need to talk too long about how important it is to have a vibrant assessors department in terms of not only getting the assessments done, but to deal with all of the commercial issues that come up and all of the challenges that come up, abatements and that sort of thing. So it's really important to us to have good continuity. And so we were lucky enough to hire Paul, has come on board. And you started in January, am I right?
Yes, correct.
Right. And we'll let you guys do your intros in a second here, okay? I'm going to try to not talk too long, but to frame it, really. Jim, we're going to transition the support from Jim, especially on the commercial side, under a contracted service, which will go for a period of time, several years probably, but that's basically how we're doing it, is to have a contracted service with support for the commercial side, Paul full-time, and to bring, and to outsource again the data collection. And that's really what drives the money in this. We've shifted a number of things. So the contractual piece is significantly bigger. There's, and we've hired a new assessor, and so the money was made available through that process. Let's see, just a couple of other notes. One comment I want to make, that in terms of having Jim stay on board on a contractual basis, that's not an unusual thing for towns to do, have consulting for commercial processes, and it's a good model. The data collection piece that we're using, it's not, I think Patriot's been purchased, so it's a different company, but basically the same operation that we've worked with in the past. Yeah, David Tate and I did this subcommittee, by the way, and we did vote 2-0-0. I think David's probably not even dialed in, so we apologize for that, but you'll just have to live with me. What else do I want to mention before I turn it over to you guys? Well, one sort of editorial thing I will say is that in terms of evaluations of properties and how things are looking, I would say that we're seeing things relatively flat, maybe some slight upticks, but we're not doing too badly on the commercial side. I think we're relatively optimistic on how all that's going to flow over the next year or two. Obviously, we have some contested accounts, but we're dealing with that as well, and they can talk to that in more detail if you'd like. So that's really it. It's a budget of what? Get your hard number here. I believe it's as published originally, if I'm not mistaken, Paul, right?
462, 837?
Yeah, 462, 837, and a 2.83% increase, and there's a lot of shifting that's gone on to get us there. So I think what I would like to do is give these gentlemen a chance. And do we have someone from the board here as well? Yeah,
We
okay.
have
So
two members here, and the third is up on the
yeah,
screen.
you might want to all introduce yourselves, because
Yeah,
we
please.
really get to meet the board, let alone a new person.
Please introduce yourselves.
Paul Tanny, Town Appraiser, Assessor. Next to me is Jim Doherty, Commercial Appraiser.
Paul Shannon, I'm the chairman.
And Kathy O'Neill, I'm on the board.
All right.
Thank you, welcome. Would you like to add anything to what Frank said?
No, I think you covered it. Jim and Paul handled the rest of it.
I would just like to point out, for the office staffing, as Frank mentioned, that we are eliminating the data collector position, which is full-time, and we're also, to get to the budget to where we are now, we also are not renewing our part-time clerk as well for the new year.
Okay, thanks. Questions?
You might, I'm sorry, Joe, and Paul, Paul's been in this business a while, so we feel very lucky to have been able to bring you on board. You were where last?
My past 7 years, I was the Director of Assessments in Arlington, Mass.
Right, so he's not a rookie, fortunately for us, so thank you.
Welcome.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome aboard, Paul.
Thank you.
And Jim, it's good to see that we have your continued service here, which is great. Where's Mr. Doherty showing up in the budget here? I wasn't sure where that.
Well, I can tell you that.
Contracted services.
Commercial assistant and contracted services.
The commercial deed ATB support?
That's gone to zero, right? And under contracted services, if I could find the page, he appears on the,
The commercial deed and ATB support?
yes, I can't find it for some reason.
Okay, if it's that line, I now understand. Great, that makes sense.
Yes,
That's the right
Correct.
one?
yes.
Okay, all right, that makes total sense then. That answers my other question. Thank you.
I did have a question. What's driving the Patriot costs going up almost by 100%? It's going from 50 to 92.
Because we are now contracting them again to do the data collection.
Okay, so that's the data collection aspect. They're responsible for that. Okay. Any other questions? Phil?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to say that, this period of time couldn't be more critical, and your department couldn't be more important to the town, and I hope the town meeting handles it in a better manner than they did last year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. Any other questions?
You guys are gonna get off easy.
Just,
Yeah.
so, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
So we're in the middle of, I'm not gonna use the wrong terminology, not a reevaluation, where I guess this Patriot has been going around and confirming the objective details about all the residential properties. How's that going?
It's been going very well so far. Our data collector is out there currently now, Jim Hall, and he's been getting into, most of the residents have been very cooperative. He's leaving a notice whenever someone is not home, and we're getting phone calls to set up appointments. So, so far, so good with it, and the residents have been very cooperative recently.
Good. I mean, he visited my house, and I was very happy with how it went. I've heard of one or two incidents that people were less happy and they were surprised, but I think that's because they were sort of new homeowners. So
The value must have gone up.
no, they weren't home, and anyway.
The individual did make contact, I believe, with the office as well, and all taxpayers should not only for this gentleman, but other people that approach the house, in my opinion, ask for ID. He does have town-issued ID by the police department, and I would encourage all taxpayers to request to see that, even if he's not going in the house. It's really two sides of what he does. One is to go around, do exterior information, if he can't gain entrance and if it's permissible. The other is to gain entry into the home. Some people, rightfully so, may choose that it's just a bad time or for whatever the issue may be, but would allow them to do the outside right now, and then they will follow up at a later date and make the inspection, and that's perfectly fine as well.
Great, thank you.
Can you give us an update on the commercial side and how that's looking and going?
I'm helping Paul a little because even though he came on in January and he's a solid, assessor in the history, he came on after the deadline for that and after the values were changed, so I'm just addressing some of these issues right now. You guys can all knock on the wood that you have. I have plastic here, but we made out very well in terms of abatement requests this year, both on the residential side, but more importantly, from a financial standpoint, the commercial side. It was basically par for what we get in any given year. We evaluate them all, we look at them all, and we don't see great liability. Clearly, we may have differences in opinions as to what the value of a property will be, but based on our information, information transactions that have been taking place in the market, the commercial market, again, certain segments, I'm talking in a general standpoint, but key to Burlington in particular is Class A office space. Some very, very aggressive sales, quite a few, not one outlier, but a few. With the new lab space that I know the Economic Development Director is working very hard on. We're starting to see some transition. I'm sure you're all aware of that, going that direction. Probably more stable looking forward. And certainly from a valuation standpoint, where you want to be. Much more valuable than Class A office space, certainly other uses. So pleasantly surprised. I think it will serve the community well in terms of what took place this year and the lack of pushback, if you will. We do have a particular property that we had a history with, and we ended up on not getting the desired result. We still have liability there, but just to give a little point of information here, twofold. We have, prior to the bills going out for this year, 3 commercial properties under appeal. And I will tell you that that's probably pretty unheard of in any community, let alone ones with the concentration of commercial properties that Burlington have. Now, some of those properties, the one in particular that I have referred to, and you're probably all aware of it, that has multiple years attached to it. So I don't want to mislead anyone, but you're talking 3 properties out of just shy of 400. So I would suggest to you that's good from a financial standpoint of the town.
Awesome, thank you. Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rounded deal was just announced. Have you had an opportunity to analyze that from a perspective of our valuation versus what the sale price was?
It's a very low cap rate, I think, Phil.
Is it?
Lower the cap rate, higher value, kind of inside ball over here we're talking. We haven't had the pleasure of talking with the new ownership or anything what their thoughts are. I believe that may be in one of the areas that was designated for a certain use, in addition to another one. I think, and I'm not sure, and I have no idea what their plans are, so I don't want to speculate, but there are a couple of uses that may be advantageous to that site that are not widespread across the community. One particular one is there's not even a person using that use right now in town, as best as my knowledge. So that could be it. Certainly, it could be a lab play, because a lot of activity going on with labs up and down 128 and other historically typical communities. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I think there's something
But it came
more
in
than
at a
the
higher
sticks and
value than what I assessed value.
Absolutely, absolutely, as well as a few up on Vandegraff. Very, very strong sales. And again, I think Vandegraff was one, I don't know 100% certainty as I sit here if those particular properties were in, but I know there was some zoning changes done last year to facilitate lab space, and I believe it was up on Vandegraff as well, a couple of the parcels up there. So,
Rounder was one of the ones changed.
exactly, yes, that as well, I'm sorry, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not part of my report, it's really a question. On the other side of the house, the residential side, so Burlington, I've been sort of driving around a lot of the subdivisions and whatnot in town, and the number of homes that are either tear downs that are underway or that have been homes that have been replaced with major renovations or complete new homes is, to me, is like a high percentage. And I'm wondering, in the evaluations that you're doing on the residential side, do you have a feel for how much incremental value we're picking up in all these new homes? Because I think it's a big number of homes.
So what I've seen so far, typically the smaller homes are selling, they're assessed in the $600,000 range.
Right.
And when they are being torn down and resold, you're talking close to 1.5 in a lot of cases, or above in that ballpark. So you're talking a difference of, in a lot of homes, of
Factor of two.
$500,000-$600,000 difference.
And do you know what percentage of, how much of that are you seeing? And as you go out and reassess, a lot on parcel XYZ, what percentage of those are just brand-new homes or have gone from 600,000 to 1.2 million?
That's pretty difficult to quantify right now. I wouldn't even speculate what a percentage number would be with how many there are per year. There's got to be about 20 plus houses for this year that have been renovated to that extent.
I will say, Frank, that when I first came about 12 years ago, maybe there were a half dozen, possibly a dozen homes at that point in time valued or transferring at over $1 million. I think probably looking back, you forget about the 2 years of COVID, right, that we all want to. But, so really stretch it back to 4, possibly 5, but probably 4, I would say you started to get easily a dozen a year, if not more, transferring there. You guys are out there, you see it all the time. I mean, pretty much any of our modest housing, not unlike many communities, within the 128, 495 ring it's starting to get to, they're gonna be tear downs. As Paul mentioned, years ago, not too long ago, 5, 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, they were 250, 300. You knew pretty much all of those were being bought by developers, and they were gonna be, new homes built on them. That number is up over 450, maybe 500. They're starting to get to, and for lot values. We're blessed on the board. We have Kathy O'Neill. We have Kevin Sheehan. He was on here earlier. I'm not sure what happened, if he had to drop off or something. But they're both residential real estate appraisers, very active in the marketplace, very knowledgeable, great value to the board, help us tremendously in terms of, testing the analysis that Paul has done historically and will be doing. So I think you're gonna see more of it. And I think if you look at the package we give to the selectmen, you can really see how that average residential assessment is starting to trend up.
Yeah.
And we discussed, John Denizio had asked earlier this year, maybe we should start looking at 2 different numbers for the residential. Because we still have a lot of people, when we put a residential average assessment on there, okay, on one end or the other, it's kind of skewed. So we may want to start, just for the edification of the public and the Board of Selectmen, that maybe we choose a number around 600,000 that hits a lot of the population, but also another one at $1.2 million or $1 million even, that, you know, shows the ramification of that as well. So, you know, it's just data, you know, that, you know.
Every pre-1970 home in the town is going to be knocked down in the next 5 years, 10 years.
Roger.
So. That'd be mine.
Watch out for the bulldozers, Frank.
Phil's coming with the bulldozer.
You can stop doing housework on.
Yeah, stop
around the
doing it.
house.
Yeah, Phil's coming with that bulldozer.
So just kind of in the fullness of time, how long does the residential reassessment take, and when would there be sort of some summary evaluation of what changes from previous state that we could look at?
You're talking going back to the data collection?
Yeah, I don't, you know, you're gonna do data collection, and then there's some analysis that would
Every
be
year.
interesting. When's it get done?
Well, every year. So, for example, the data collector goes out, we do about 900, that's the cyclical inspections a year, okay, that you're referring to. Then in addition to that, we do building permits. Both of those, if we find changes out there in the marketplace, they're reflected for the next fiscal year. So I'm not gonna say it's live time, but it's as live time as government assessing works. You know, you have an assessment date each year of January 1st. It's for the next fiscal year, so in this case, our valuation date is 1/22 for fiscal '23. And theoretically, it applies as of July 1st, but as you know, you don't get that third quarter bill until essentially a year later, in December, and that's when you see what that number is, the rates come in, so you see the impact of that. But it's done right away.
Individually, I was just thinking about, you know, to Frank's point about tear downs and new value, and the number of things that have been significantly upgraded. Kind of curious when the statistics about that kind of activity would show up.
Yeah, right, because it's
Oh,
an
you can
important
get that from the
indicator.
building department in terms of how many tear downs. I'm sure they track permits by different things, so that's very
You're right,
accessible
it's all
now.
in the permits, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Thanks.
drives it up. You're welcome.
Move to approve?
Thank you.
Second?
Thank you. Frank,
Aye.
Brad,
Yes.
Megan,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Phil,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Jaya,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. That's 12-0-0.
So, thank you for coming out tonight. It's really nice to see all these.
And again,
Thank you all.
thank you for your,
Good night.
thank you for your patience. All right, so that leaves us with minutes. And I sent out a couple revisions of it late into the day. So we'll start with March 9th. I'm not sure, does anyone have any changes to propose for March 9th? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Thank you. Frank?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Megan?
Abstain.
Okay. Doug?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Jaya?
Yes.
Rob?
Abstain.
Thank you. John?
Yes.
And chair votes aye, so that's 10-0-2. So now we move on to 316. And I think there was one additional comment that came back that I used the word Java to refer to John and myself as people who were present in the meeting, but otherwise there is written. So that will be fixed. Don't ask. It's one of those copy-paste things.
We won't ask.
We won't ask. Does the chair have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Thanks, John. Thanks, Roger. Frank?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Phil?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Yes.
Jaya?
Yes.
Rob? John?
Yes.
And chair votes aye, so that's 1101. And then finally, March 23rd as written. Any comments or clarifications? Thank you.
Second?
Frank?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Doug?
Where would you go?
Mike?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Roger?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
Jaya? Thank you. Rob?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And the chair votes aye, that's 1200. So up next week, we have a full plate again. We have the Department of Public Works, we have Youth and Family Services, accommodated accounts that interest and principal, which is always fun, Historical Commission, Town Clerk, Board of Registers, and Board of Appeals, and we also have the Rec Department.
So the debt service is on next week?
The debt service is on next week.
Okay, so
yeah.
we haven't seen that one yet. John's working on it.
Okay. And then after that, the week of 4/14, we have schools. So I will, oh, well, what about Shawsheen? We need to find that out.
Yes, I need to find that out.
Okay. I will look in the mailbox downstairs. We may have a budget there.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah. I got it 18 months, or 12 months too late last time, so we'll get that fixed.
I'm sure we can get it electronically.
Yeah, all right.
Quicker or more reliably.
Anyways.
The schools are not voting, the school committee is not voting until the 26th. So, and I think we'll have to put them on the schedule for May 4th.
Okay, so I will,
Probably that and all of the schools' capital items as well.
right. I think we just passed the date for town meeting. The final warrant articles was due, I think, on the 27th.
Placeholders in though, right?
Yeah.
They did, yes.
Yeah.
They voted placeholders for 12 items.
But I mean in general, both the town side and the school side
Yeah,
were
you're
due,
right.
so
They
we
get
should
closed
get a
this week.
list. Yeah, we should get a list in about a week or so, and I'll distribute that out to everyone.
Have we scheduled the CPA for the warrant article discussions? Because that seems pretty relevant for us,
The CPA.
the Community Preservation Act.
They were gonna give us.
So it's not attached to an department.
Yes, it's gonna come in as part of the
is why I'm
warrant
asking.
articles.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Are we
I-
gonna get a presentation on one of the?
Yes, I've asked, or I've been asked by, I'm forgetting who asked me, but I said during the time the warrant article would come in, he could come in and talk.
Okay.
It'll,
They've been very proactive.
yeah,
Which is
no,
good.
they reached out and I agreed that they would come in and give a presentation, so.
Good. Excellent. Motion to adjourn?
I had one more, I had one more thing.
Good try.
Hold that thought.
So, the rec department will come in next week and talk about their new positions, and then if we meet on the 14th, we will have a discussion about all the two positions, the planning and the rec department, and we'll hash that all out. If anybody has any concerns, or wants, the opinion of the town administration, Paul has agreed to speak to that as well, so I'm happy to have him come by and talk as well.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, one thing that might help us, can we get an updated scorecard?
Yes.
Is it online?
It's online now.
Oh,
There was a problem with the link. It's now in the, Whitney just straightened it out this afternoon.
Okay.
So there's a link under department, or, no, I think it's on that main Ways and Means page
It's on
If
with
you
all
want-
the links, yeah.
If you want, I can send it out.
No, if it's online, that's fine.
It's there.
Okay.
It's there.
It's 20 feet long, right?
Well, it's 2 pages. Yeah, but
Well,
very
yeah, but
wide.
you need to
Very
print it
wide
on
pages, right.
10 by 20 poster board or something.
Yeah, I'll get my map printer out.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, thank you. I thought you'd never say that.
Frank had something. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night.
We're out of here.
Hi, Jay.
Oh.
Hi, Ed.